Here, let's start with Geeta Dhyana. In Kartikeya, you can even get yourself a little closer, dude. Very good. O Bhagavad Gita, by which Arjuna was illumined by Lord Krishna himself, and which was composed of 18 chapters within the Mahabharata by the ancient sage Vyasa. O Divine Mother, destroyer of rebirth, who showers the nectar of oneness upon us, O Bhagavad Gita, my affectionate mother, on thee I meditate. All the Upanishads are the cows. The milker is the cowherd boy, Krishna. Arjuna is the calf. People of purified intellect are the drinkers. And the milk is the supreme nectar of the Gita. My salutations to the Lord, who is the source of supreme bliss, whose grace makes the mute eloquent and the crippled cross mountains. Hariom Tat Sat. So, we're going to come back to Swami Chinmayananda's commentary, introductory commentary on the yoga of the three gunas, the yoga of the nature of nature, the nature of nature. So, Swami Chinmayananda, and I'm going to recommend after we cover this, everybody could do well to read this introductory today sometime. So I'm going to suggest and ask that everyone do it. Further, find 10 minutes. Find that 10 minutes to pick up. I think there are 2 or 3 copies in the library. To pick it up, the introduction to this chapter. Yeah. Swami Chinmayananda has a very technical mind, and so if our bent is towards bhakti or karma yoga, etc., sometimes very hard to relate to. And, we might not have the natural predisposition, but having said that, this discussion is one of the most important in Gita in terms of understanding the nature of the field and being able to differentiate ourselves and Lord and field, but see the unity and relate to the unity in all of them. Interestingly, this world seems to be, upon inspection it's not, but it seems to be a world of such diversity, with diversity being the leading characteristic. It's actually the reverse of this. It's actually a unity with an expression that's diverse, with an expression that's absolute diversity. And so we're needing to be able to relate to both of these and really be centered in the unity. You know, one of Paramahansa Yogananda's great quotes is, the yogi must be still in the midst of crashing worlds. And when you poke your head outside, you see the world is crashing. And so, and by the way, not for nothing, but each of us have this thing called death ahead of us, which is not death. It is the separation of the soul from the body, but it's quite traumatic, and it has the great potential to throw us off. Right? And so we may have done really good work, and the really good work in whatever field, in worldly field or spiritual field, whatever. But that event and all of that leading up to it, if we're still caught up in the idea that I am this, then it's going to throw you off your game. And so this understanding is paramount for bhakti as well. Swami Shivananda says that this understanding of the nature and relationship is absolutely paramount.
But it's gonna throw you off your game in any case if you're not self-realized. because the seeds are still there.
Yeah, but don't place self-realized in such a high place that you think that you're not, or you think that it's impossible for you.
Right.
So it doesn't mean self-realized meaning you realize who you are. It doesn't mean something mystical.
It seems like a big thing, though.
Yeah. It might seem like a big thing from some perspective, but it's actually a very simple thing. You already know that you're not the body, don't you, Hari?
Yeah.
Okay. So it's simply being integrated in this, and how to be integrated in it. You live in the way that we're living, and you honor it, and you honor that above the feelings. And so some feeling arises, and you recognize that's not me. So we practice it, right? And you do what is to be done, recognizing also I'm not the doer either. You can even see what it is that you're engaging in. And this discourse, understanding it, helps to see what you're engaging in. What are you doing? What is this yoga? What is really the work that you're doing? And what is it that you're relying upon or holding on to as you do the work? And then knowing this, then you're self-realized. Now, perfecting it means living in it at that point. And are you able to be unshakable at that time?
Right.
Then, yeah. But, the story that we shared of Arjuna, our dear Arjuna, relative of this Arjuna, disciple of Swami Vishnu, fully, completely self-realized? No, at that point that he shares the story about the body surfing and all of that, but he knew enough.
Right.
Yes? So there's that too, you see. Do you see? He knew enough.
Right.
And even though he wasn't completely integrated in it, he knew it. And just that grace of that hesitation and the question, wait a second, I'm supposed to be doing something, what is it? Right? And then the realization at this time to remember the Lord and chant my mantra. You see?
Yeah.
So you wouldn't call him fully self-realized, but you would say, he was saved by his sadhana. Yes?
Yeah.
And having had that experience, do you suppose when the real physical separation comes, you'll remember what to do?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, there you go.
Right.
Okay, so let's pick up this commentary. So it's so practical, yes? People think that yoga is something, but it's so practical. It's not a woo-woo thing. It's not about having some off-the-wall experience. It's not even about the ecstasies, although the ecstasies are lovely. It's about really coming to this knowing, and then depending upon our path, really giving ourselves fully into that absolute according to our path. This knowledge helps one to devote more deeply if one is a bhakta, yes?
Yeah.
If one has this disposition. It helps one to serve more naturally if one is predisposition to karma yoga. So, okay. So we'll pick up here. He's introduced the three gunas, and he's called them unactivity, activity, and inactivity. And unactivity being differentiated from inactivity. Un is not. So not identified with the activity. As opposed to inactivity, which is an activity. And it's an interesting way of differentiating sattva from tamas. Because actually, as we explore, sometimes tamas will look like sattva. And sometimes we'll mistake tamas for sattva when we're managing this inner person. Right? Okay, it says these three in different proportions influence the mental and the intellectual caliber of every individual, and these influences provide the distinct flavor in each personality. All three are always present in every bosom, but from man to man, their proportion slightly differs. Hence the distinct aroma in the character, conduct, and behavior of each individual. The Gita, being a discourse upon the science of self-perfection, has to be extremely logical in the development of the theme. We've been watching how from chapter to chapter the theme has been evolving very systematically. Right? We said the other day, Jivananda Prabhu said, in the second chapter, everything is there. Right? And the 18th chapter, everything is there. So everything else is really coming into an understanding of what it is that's being shared, so a deeper dive. And so it's like putting the clothing together, weaving the clothing, weaving the cloth. And so filling it in other words, the frame is there and now filling it in. So very systematically, ideas hinted at in a previous chapter are taken up one by one in the following chapters for thorough treatment and an exhaustive evaluation. Dozens of fresh, regulated ideas are supplied at the right time to facilitate perfect digestion and right assimilation for the student's understanding. In the context of the theme development in the Gita, this is the most appropriate occasion when the seeker must know precisely what are the nature and the behavior of these gunas. In the exhaustive discussions in this chapter, we're introduced to each one of them. The three gunas perform or function within each of us, and therefore each seeker must know the art of subjectively diagnosing them in himself. You will, Nathan, as you understand, and in this first step through, you'll have some clarity about nature and why people are the way they are, why they act the way they are, why they say what they say, etc., etc. But it's not really to be used for outer intellect. When we're caught up in it, we'll judge, and so it'll say, this person is rajasic, this person is tamasic, etc. But the understanding of it really is necessary for your own inner person. The mind, the intellect, the flavor, the personality, inner personality of this person. Outer personality is different. Outer personality is related to the inner personality, but the inner personality is when someone says something, how do you feel? Right? Anger arises inside before it's expressed outside. And you may choose to stifle it. You may say, I can't be seen to be like this. That's our typical way of dealing with things. So we become split, a schism at that point. It's dishonest. So the feeling arises, and then instead of expressing the feeling, we manipulate in some way. Now, is the feeling to be expressed? Well, the negative, the detrimental emotional feelings that are born of the idea of separation and the feeling of separation, they're to be sublimated. That means transcended, sublimated, integrated in the light. They're to be brought to the light. Sattva. We'll explore more about sattva. They're to be brought to the light. But what we end up is disintegrated because in the inner person, feelings are arising, fears arise, feelings of separation, feelings of need, desire, etc. I remember, and it happens, it seems very innocently, but it happens. So see if this is helpful. I remember as a child wanting things and not wanting things. And, this is a part of the program, which is this nature. And when I wanted something, I would get it or try to get it or say that I wanted it. And when I didn't want it, I would say the same. So I was very open. You watch Narayana over the last couple of years and you would see this. Mm. And then you see this development come too, which is, although it's beautiful how actually I also see in Narayana a transcending that's occurring, a deeper understanding that's actually coming. Mm. But here's what happened here is when I was corrected, spanked or sat in the corner of the room for a while or yelled at or whatever, when I was corrected or simply told that I was wrong, then it didn't change the fact that I still wanted the thing or didn't want the thing or the experience. And so what I learned was how to get the thing by behaving in a certain way. Sometimes I would not say what the feelings were, and not saying meaning also not act them outside. Can you learn to stifle your feelings and you feel them inside, but you don't express them outside?
You need to show to get what you want.
Yeah, yeah. So, and this is the way this split occurs, this duality within myself, right? There's an inner person. So here we're talking about the inner person, getting at the inner person, not the outer person. What you say or what you do is very important, but ultimately you have to get to the inner person and transform the inner person and integrate in that. And then you become transparent. Right? Then you become, and you don't have an issue with being transparent. You don't live your life to get what you want any longer.
Worries. Sounds easy.
Well, it's simple in a way. It's simple. Now, these gunas are affecting the inner person. That's where you'll see them. You'll see them also expressed outwardly. For example, this deception would be tamas, and we'll dive into more. This tendency to deceive would be tamasic, rajasic, certainly not sattva. Mm. But it's the inner person that you're wanting to apply this science to, this understanding to, and look at what you're dealing with. You as soul, to see what you're dealing with that is veiling or tossing, that's preventing you from living in and recognizing your own self and the divine. So
I was just listening to an Alan Watts video the other day, and he was saying something about how because he was perceived as this guru or this guy or this whatever it was, that he would try and fall into that and meet that criteria, but then he found he was having problems because it was deception. He was showing people what they wanted to see and internalizing everything else, and eventually when he embraced that, some people won't like it, but then he bloomed into something else. He could become...
Yes, correct. It's the tendency to please, and the reason we wish to please is to get what we want. It's a part of the transaction, and this world is transactional. Right? So we say people pleasing. We want to please. But pleasing people is part of this split, part of this schizophrenia or schism that we ourselves created because we held on to the notion of being separate, and we held on to and honored the feeling of getting what I want instead of accepting what I'm given. So pleasing indeed. Okay, and that is also related to the gunas. As we explore this, that tendency or that that desire is also related to the gunas. Okay, so the three gunas function within each one of us, and therefore each seeker must know the art of subjectively diagnosing them in himself. So when we say we have to become our own psychiatrist, psychologist, this is it. Yeah, we must. We must. If we're to actually get to the root of what's causing us to suffer, this is where it has to be done. So we want to be able to diagnose them ourselves. We want to be able to see what's up in ourselves, meaning the inner person, not ultimately soul.
We're just learning about what covers the soul.
We're dealing with the covering.
What piece of clothing are we wearing? What's it made of? How loose or thin or thick?
And how do I take it off?
And how do I take it off?
Which is related to what it's made of. So it's not just to study it. It's not just to know about it. It's to learn how to remove it, how to dismantle it. Okay. Symptomatic treatment is one of the methods of medical treatment. In this chapter, certain symptoms are enumerated by the Geeta Acharya, and they indicate the preponderance of one or the other of the gunas in an individual. We know what symptoms mean.
Effects.
Things that are displayed as a result of the...
Yeah, exactly. So sneeze, somebody sits and sneezes for a long time, you say, he has a cold. So in the same way, anger arises, symptomatic of rajas, passion. And you can see it easily if you know what you're looking for. Passion. Passion meaning, I need this and I will get this, and need it and will get it because it's going to make me happy, obviously. Why else do anything, right? So that's passion. And anger, of course, would arise because either you get it and it's not what you wanted, and then self-anger, or you don't get it, and then obviously someone else was the problem because it wasn't you. You did everything you could to get it. But since you didn't get it, it was someone else. Hari did it. Or if you're trying to get peace and you're frustrated about not getting peace, and so it's somebody else's responsibility because they wore this or made that sound or had this smell in meditation. You came to meditation to have peace. So rajas, that'll be symptomatic of rajas, right?
Yeah.
In the company of tamas, in the company of darkness as well. So certain symptoms are enumerated, and they indicate the preponderance of one and the other. So that will help you to diagnose. It'll help you to see what it is that this inner personality is constructed of. Thus, a careful study of the chapter provides us with the secret capacity of detecting within ourselves the most powerful tendency that rises up to rule our mental life at any given moment. Why is it a secret capacity?
Because it hides itself.
The secret capacity to detect within ourselves is something that others won't know about, right? Nor need to know about. So it's a secret to yourself. The capacity to recognize what's arising and what's the cause of the arising. Does that make sense?
The secret, like the secret of the field and the knower of the field. It's a secret until you actually turn towards it.
Well, it's a secret because the one who knows, even if you say you know, what difference does that make? And by the way, you're not going to say that you know. I know. Because that indicates I don't know. So it remains a secret. It's a secret in the silence. In the inner world.
Ponder that.
In the inner world. Oh. So he says, a seeker who is sensitive enough to recognize the various influences under which he's forced to function from time to time in the world outside will be able to discard all wrong impulses, immoral tendencies, unethical urges, and animal passions, and keep himself safely balanced in righteous living, in self-control and serene purity. So we have that living example of Gandhi, who we spent time with a week or so ago to see that at work. Right? Completely unaffected by the things happening around. But certainly understanding the causes of it and the potentialities of it arising within himself. Do you suppose that there was a time when anger arose within and he had to see it and root it out?
That relationship with his wife.
Oh. Okay. So, through this process, then, in this understanding, here, one can keep himself balanced in righteous living, self-control, and serene purity in the midst of the battlefield. You know, the beauty of the Bhagavad Gita is it's not a yoga that's taught and practiced in a cave. This is the most powerful yoga. Being able to practice it in the midst of the battlefield. Yes?
Anywhere and everywhere.
Anywhere and everywhere. This chapter is an exhaustive handbook of instructions explaining the working of the subtle body and providing us with some tips as to how we can readjust ourselves when the inner mechanism gets choked up and starts misfiring. Did you hear what that said?
I've always liked, as I have read through this, exhaustive, because it is. At one point, at least this mind would get like exhausted. Another one, and yet in multiple readings, it's another one.
Yeah. So an exhaustive handbook of instructions explaining the workings of the subtle body. And for Uma Devi will help her to take note of this discussion of subtle body, astral, subtle body, the mental, the inner person, not the outer person. And providing us with some tips as how we can readjust ourselves when the inner mechanism gets choked up and starts misfiring. Have we had experience with that?
I lost complete control the other day over French fries.
If a man totally ignorant of the behavior and nature of the machine under the bonnet were to drive a car wishing to make a long pilgrimage, he may not have a very pleasant journey if and when the engine starts misbehaving. On the other hand, if he be an experienced driver, knowing the nature and behavior of the engine, he can immediately stop the car, open the bonnet, readjust the machine, and drive on towards the goal. Many a seeker ends his brilliant and promising spiritual career because, on the way to self-perfection, he develops engine trouble, and not knowing why his mind behaves in that particular fashion, he gets victimized by lust or passion and suffers from the sorrows of his spiritual fall. Om Namah Shivaya. A knowledge of this chapter assures a steady progress on our path as it introduces us to the secret methods of the mind on all occasions. This chapter is very important for all seekers. So we'll close there. And then Uma Devi, suggestion is this introduction, it's just 3 pages, so it's 15 minutes like that we each read it today, because it's scientific, it's very detailed, but it's a beautiful introduction to to what we're stepping into, which is this discussion of the nature of nature and how it's applied. Really, we just said, in a way, it'll help you to see the outside and have a deeper understanding of the outside in terms of the surface level, the way things behave, how this differentiation is working. But really, the practice for a yogi is to, because this starts within the inner person.
Is that in what book?
This is the Swami Chinmayananda, Holy Geeta, and we have a few of them out here. I think there are 2 copies of it in the Geeta section, which is just on the other side of the camera.
Note 14.
Might look like this.
Yeah,
You
there we
can
go.
borrow this too.
There we go.
14.
Chapter 14.
In when you were traveling somewhere and I was assigned to a satsang,
Yes.
I opened a book and it was the meditation and mantras from Swami Venkatesananda.
Yes. Yes.
And it was a section of the gunas as well, and it explained. I think that one is also worth to read it. It
Okay.
explains very scientifically as well.
Good.
On the elements.
Good. Good. And the purpose isn't really to help us with the outer seeing. It's to help us in terms of understanding this inner personality. And it's the inner personality that's really been ruling us. We were just discussing, starting with our own, the feeling of being separate, which is a part of our inner personality, and then the particular desires and aversions that are arising on the inside of us. And then, as we come here from childhood, as we come here into this body and we experience childhood, these inner desires and aversions will start very quickly to express outside. But that schism is developing in the personality at that point because a lot of these will be, quote unquote, socially unacceptable. And so the world will relate to us in that way, and it won't change our desires. So we'll still want what we want, but we learn to behave in a way to get what we want and to avoid what we don't want. And that schism is coming there between the inner personality and the outer personality. So that's why and so often when we think of our personality, we're thinking of how we relate outside, how we speak and all that. No. We're wanting to deal with the inner personality, this inner child which got stifled in order to satisfy. And the only way to satisfy is ultimately with the connection to source. And the recognition that I have what I need. I don't need something.
Mm-hmm.
And when I recognize it, then you see the inner person is satisfied. The outer person does what it does. It will integrate. And at that point, it'll integrate because then it's not important to me how I'm seen. Because I know I'm okay however I'm seen. Yeah? So understanding this is helping us to integrate the inner person, to see what's arising in the inner person that then somehow leads to some manifestation outside. And of course, dissatisfaction. Oh, okay. So we'll read that today. And then we pick up, tomorrow morning we'll start Sloka 1 and 14. Okay. Oh. So we close. Final prayer narrative. Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushtivardhanam Orvai Rukamiva Bandhanan Mritor Mokshayamamritata Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushtivardhanam Orvai Rukamiva Bandhanan Mritor Mokshayamamritata Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushtivardhanam Orvai Rukmeva Bandinan Mritor Mokshiyam Amritat Om Sarvesham Swastir Bhavatu Sarvesham Shantir Bhavatu Sarvesham Purnam Bhavatu Sarvesham Mangalam Bhavatu Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinaha Sarve Shantu Niramaya Sarve Bhadrani Pashyanto Makashi Dukhabha Bhave Asato Ma Satgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya Om Purnamida Purnamidam Purnamudashate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishate Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. O adorable Lord of mercy and love, salutations and prostrations unto Thee. Thou art omnipresent, omnipotent, and omniscient. Thou art Satchidananda. Thou art existence, knowledge, and bliss absolute. Thou art the indweller of all beings. Grant us an understanding heart, equal vision, balanced mind, faith, devotion, and wisdom. Grant us inner spiritual strength to resist temptation and to control the mind. Free us from egoism, lust, anger, greed, hatred, and jealousy. Fill our hearts with divine virtues. Let us behold Thee in all these names and forms. Let us serve Thee in all these names and forms. Let us ever remember Thee. Let us ever sing Thy glories. Let Thy name be ever on our lips. Let us abide in Thee forever and ever. On below Sakura Shivananda Maharaj Ki, and for all the saints and sages of all the traditions. Jai. Okay, let's stand for Arati.